Hello, Sword of Allah. You sent me a PM a little over a week ago, and I sent one back to you saying I was going to do a vlog addressed to you. And almost a week has passed, and part of the reason for that is that every video that you do and every controversy that you have been involved in here makes me want to jump in and say something. And at least for this first vlog, I'd like to keep it simple and to the point. I subscribed to you at that moment when you were having a kind of a vlog duel with Fake Sagan, and I had just finished one, or was finishing one, with him as well. And then also, all of a sudden, Snow announced he was leaving and that you would be taking over his channel. So I thought that you were going to be the, I guess I should take a step back and say I had subscribed to Snow like 7 months ago or something, thinking that at some point I was going to want to talk about Islam and Islamic issues, and I wasn't going to just I wanted to address it to at least some part of the Muslim YouTube community when I did. So, and Snow seemed to be the representative of YouTube Muslims that I thought I could talk to rather than at. But one thing led to another. I am so far behind on all the things that I've wanted to talk about here that it's not even funny. Anyway, so now Snow is back again, but you're still here, and I was very impressed with the way you expressed yourself, and also impressed that you were not soft-pedaling what you believe, that you were trying to be as upfront and honest as possible. So that seemed to be a step in the right direction. Also because, well, I'm really glad you did your story of Khalid video, and I hope you do the sequels to that and tell the rest of your story, because that answered a number of questions that I had had, since you were identifying yourself as Somali, but you sounded like you had grown up in the U.S., and you had talked about reverting rather than converting to Islam from Christianity, etc., etc. So hearing your story was quite compelling, and there's still a number of things I'd like to hear more about, like how you ended up at this, predominantly rich white school that you mentioned, and what the relationship is between your father, your stepfather, your biological father, who was what. But in general, your story of Khalid video really struck a chord with me, which I'm not sure that I can really explain. It made perfect sense to me that you were attracted first to the Nation of Islam by the movie Malcolm X, based on your own story and your own manner. You remind me in some ways of Malcolm X, who is someone I don't know exactly what the word, I shouldn't say hero, because I don't really have heroes, or the people that I would say are heroes to me are all people who have huge flaws. And it's not that they're knights in shining armor or right, or people to be emulated in their beliefs so much as that they have this commitment to the truth. And even if what they decide is the truth is not what I decide is the truth, that human commitment is really compelling to me, and certainly in the case of Muhammad X, his journey got him killed, and he knew that that was probably where it was going to take him. So that is intensely compelling. And when I try to imagine where his life would have gone if, by some fluke he had survived that assassination attempt, or it had been, stopped or aborted somehow, what kind of a person he would be today. I like to imagine that he is a person who would have continued to be committed to the truth and let it take him where it took him, which is always, to me, the most important thing. Where I'm coming from, I am not one of these atheists who thinks that atheism is going to wipe out... Oh, damn it. Excuse me. I have to change the battery. Sorry about that. Yeah, what was I saying? As an atheist, I'm 100% certain that on the day I die, whether it's tomorrow or 50 years from now, the vast majority of the human race will still believe in one God or another. Atheism is not going to win the hearts and minds of humanity anytime soon. The theistic sensibility, the desire to believe in an unseen reality that explains the unexplainable and brings everything about existence down to the level of a human story. That's ingrained in human nature, I believe. And what's more, according to what I believe, if you live your entire life based on what you think is going to happen to you in an afterlife, and you really believe it, and this belief makes you happy and content, not to mention productive in this world, then on the day you die, you're not going to find out you were wrong. So it doesn't hurt you in any absolute objective way to be wrong about something like that. There's never going to come a day of comeuppance for you for believing what you believe, if you really believe it. Whereas according to what you believe, there will be a terrible day of comeuppance for me. So I can understand how, in this scenario, I shouldn't be that concerned about converting you, and you should be terribly, terribly concerned about converting me if you care. But since I don't believe you're right, I don't want to have my whole life deformed by your efforts to save me from something that I know is not going to happen. My concerns about religion are strictly about what it causes people to do and feel here in this life. And as far as talking or debating theists, I don't want to debate you or have you debate me if all we're going to do is just talk past each other and nothing is going to come of it. And I think that at the basic level of theist versus atheist, that is the only kind of conversation we can have. So I want to talk about other things. And what are those other things? That's where it gets tricky, and that's where I'll have to wait for other vlogs to really get into. But I did want to mention your in your video, the story of Khalid, which I really would like you to continue because it was very interesting. You mentioned that your move from the Nation of Islam to what you now call True Islam involved seeing the film The Message, which was an interesting coincidence because this coming Saturday, UCLA is having a screening of The Message as a tribute to its director, Mustafa Akkad, who was a UCLA film school graduate like me. And I've never seen it, and I'll be seeing it on Saturday. So that was interesting to me. But I want to bring up just some of the ambiguity of life to you related to that film. I don't, because I live here in, film town in Santa Monica, which is part of Los Angeles, which is essentially Hollywood, and work in the film business. I know more about the filmmakers than most people do, so maybe you really don't know too much about the guy who made The Message. His name was Mustafa Akkad. He was an immigrant to the United States from Syria, a Muslim, and he made that film out of pride in his heritage and commitment to his faith. However, he certainly would qualify as what you called in your video The Stranger, perhaps a cowardly Muslim, a moderate Muslim. He didn't wear a head covering or have a beard, and his fortune is principally the result of him having been the executive producer of Halloween and controlling the Halloween sequels. But he made that film in the teeth of opposition from the Hollywood film industry. Nobody wanted to make it. He wanted to make an Islamic biblical, just like Hollywood had made the Ten Commandments and Ben-Hur and King of Kings and all that. He wanted to do that. Hollywood had no interest in this, especially not in 1973, 74, 75, when he was trying to get the movie made, since that was the height of the first oil crisis, when Saudi Arabia jacked the price of crude up, and all of a sudden America, discovered what it meant to what Arab power actually meant. So it was a very bad time, but he went around the world and raised the money, and then he had to fight the fundamentalists, the true Muslims, if you will, in various Arab countries, who launched huge protests against that film, because it was sacrilege to make a movie about Muhammad, even when, as he kept trying to explain to them, he wasn't going to show Muhammad. He was going to treat Muhammad like William Wyler treated Jesus in Ben-Hur, only wasn't even going to show the back of his head. He was just going to be completely off camera, but that wasn't enough. The story of the troubles that he went through to get that film made are something you should look into. And of course now it's beloved among Muslims because it's a big epic about Muhammad. And whatever those critics who were launching protests and all this against the film, whatever they thought, that went by the wayside, because it was embraced by an Islamic popular audience. And then the final irony related to moderate Muslims, compromise, cowardice, and true Islam, and the debate about who gets to say what is true Islam. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Mustafa Akkad and his daughter were blown up in Amman, Jordan in 2005. by I can't remember if it was just a terrorist bomb or a suicide bomber, related to the Gulf War. The target was a hotel frequented by Westerners, according to the bombers. But of course, many more Muslims were killed than Westerners, and among them was the guy who made that film that was instrumental in making you a Muslim.